No. I want you to This is how we shut down free speech. We'll take a picture. Sure, but you didn't read the script. Oh, sorry.
This is pretty nerve-wracking because I'm really out of place. Range needs $3,000 a day to break even. Ann Galley, my brilliant bookkeeper, is here having lunch. She is much appreciated. So is our part-time designer, John Bardwell. I've worked with Bardwell since 1975 on Nevada Magazine, Silver and Blue, and Range. Bardwell's got grit, stamina, remarkable talent. If anybody knows him, you know I'm right. There are also some award-winning writers in the room, which is very kind of them to come. You just met Carolyn Defarina, who I call the Force. Marjorie Horn, social media boss. Todd McFarlane, Captain Marvelous. And Rachel Dahl, Mustang Queen. The job I have is a labor of love. I earn no salary from Range for years. Silver and Blue, I worked for the university for part-time to support myself, and I used university equipment to publish Range. I don't think Paul Page knew that for 6 years. I sold favored possessions to keep Range afloat. One of them was a 57 Chevrolet Bel Air named Precious that I found in a barn in Ely many, many years ago. I'm called many, many names because I'm an alternate voice for the most important people in the world, food producers. One man who found Range magazine online calls me the shill of industrial polluters. A former boss was so angry to find Range magazine on a newsstand in Grand Central Station in New York, he called me in Washoe Valley and said, you are a right-wing Nazi. I am a registered Democrat. A Coloradan discovered Range with an eagle on the cover in a coffee shop in Kona, Hawaii. And he salivated thinking it was Audubon. When he found the inside pages out of sync with his rigid point of view, he wrote me a letter and he says, CJ and Range readers are cousin Mary and Shepler shopping troglodytes. I love that. But we get lovely quotes too, like Range is a national treasure, honest and fearless. Range is the voice of reason amidst a cacophony of madmen. And an old cowboy wrote me a few weeks ago a sweet note in a shaky hand, and it said, Range is too precious to describe. But the question is, how the hell did I get from a polluted city, industrial city, in a cold, damp, socialist country, and end up with you today in this high, clean, beautiful desert? But that twisted track is still unraveling. I was born in World War II in Birmingham, England, the most polluted city in Europe. My father worked in a steel mill. My mother labored in a glass factory. Almost all of the 2 million people died coughing. They died really young. I worked school holidays in a place called Bywater Sausage and Pies, Monday to Saturday, 8 to 6, and I made almost $1 a day. My job was to take rats out of traps in the meat locker, clean the toilets, throw sawdust on the floor, then sell 4-penny meat pies, and I don't think I washed my hands. It was my first job in agriculture and a prelude to Range. When I was 15, my headmistress wrote to my parents and says, Caroline is uneducable, please remove her from school. So that I didn't end up in the factory, my mother made leather gloves at night to send me to Mildred Berry Secretarial School for Girls. A 6-month course took me 7.5 months. In 1958, my parents, after a very drunken, long-winded pub crawl, saw a bunch of posters around England, around Birmingham, and it said Canada, land of opportunity, and they wanted me to have some of that. So within 3 weeks, I had a passport, a visa, a cardboard suitcase with a change of clothes, a few Canadian dollars, and a one-way ticket to Canada. I did not know if that was a plus or a minus. I got a job for $35 a week in Toronto. I didn't like it, so I hitchhiked to New York. I knew a lot of people who were messengers for the United Nations, and there were 10 million people there, which was a lot of people for me to meet. And I learned something there, that England fits into Montana 13 times. That is very big country. I had to see that to believe it because of the enormity. And I hitchhiked to Billings. And I beheld clean air, clean blue skies, unlike anything I'd ever breathed or seen in Birmingham. I visited all the lower 48, worked for cash, and learned regional customs and culture, but the most inspiring letters were about individual liberty, private property rights, and the Constitution. The trip was a revelation, and I fell in love with the United States. I crossed the Atlantic again in 1960 to get a green card. I worked in London, lived in Paris until my status was blessed, and then came back to America. I worked for Simpson Timber in Seattle, and a city planner and an architect in San Francisco, and then I went back to New York. And in 1966, I got a job with the largest car book in the world, Car and Driver. Car and Driver put me on the right track. I lasted 4 days as secretary to the publisher and quit for lack of mental stimulation. While looking for a new job, I asked the managing editor for work, and he gave me a manuscript to type. It was called The Okie Charmer. It was about used car dealers in California, and it was funny. I laughed, I cried, my nose was running. The man comes over to my little cubicle and said, "Madam, what's your problem?" I said, "This guy is funny." And this guy had an enormous ego. It was his story. So that's when he hired me for editorial assistant. I was managing editor within the year. I became a citizen in '72, left New York to cover rodeo, starting at the Calgary Stampede. I drove 28,000 miles in a Dodge van that Chrysler Corporation named Sun and Moon Trash and covered rodeo in towns I'd never seen or heard of, like Deadwood, South Dakota, Puyallup, Washington, Clovis, California, and Filer, Idaho. It was about that time that I discovered that I did not need 10 million people and could survive and thrive in big, clean, empty places. In '75, I made a huge mistake. I joined the Northwest Trollers Association out of Point Angeles, Washington, and became the first female boat puller on the North American fleet, on the commercial fleet. I signed on for 4 months and 10% of the catch, and we were heading for Hawaii, Mexico, and Canada. We trawled for salmon down the coast to Eureka. I stocked the boat for 30 days at sea. I cleaned and gutted salmon, winched in tuna. In my spare time, I hope to work on a book about an innocent New Mexico rodeo cowboy who was on trial for rape in Texas. Raging seas started right out of Humboldt Bay and never ceased, so we could only use 2 lines instead of 10. On the 7th day, I asked the captain, "Send for the Coast Guard. I can't make it anymore." The Coast Guard only went 100 miles offshore, so that didn't help. About a week later, I was eating 1 shredded wheat a day, soaked in water. And a week later, I begged, send for a helicopter. I have a Bank of Americard. Our 54-foot home-built boat rocked and rolled for days, slowly climbing waves, then falling off the top. When it wasn't rough, I tied myself to the mast. I was suffering from malnutrition, dehydration, and reciting Shakespeare on the deck. I thought it was Titania in Midsummer Night's Dream, "Come sit thee down upon this flowery bed." I thought I saw Charlie Bride singing "Sunshiny Day" on my winch, and the captain had to turn that boat around, and many, many, many days later, they dropped me on the docks in Sausalito. I was a catastrophic deep-sea fishing failure and an embarrassment to my gender. I stayed with a friend until I could walk. It was a couple of weeks before I could walk. Desperate for a place without a coastline, I hitchhiked to the driest state in the Union. I needed work, found Nevada Highways and Parks on a newsstand, called the first name on the masthead and said, "It looks like you're losing money." And the economic development, Bob Goodman, said, "We are 1.8 million in the hole, and legislators have given us an ultimatum: become self-supporting within 2 years or be discontinued." I said, "I can do that," and had not a clue how. Goodman hired me as a contract photographer, and he gave me a car, a 1972 Dodge Polara with a big engine, my kind of muscle car. I drove more than 2,000 miles the first week, lots on dirt roads. I met a bass sheepherder on Waterlogg's Summit, miners in Monitor Valley, cowboys in Winnemucca. I climbed Wheeler Peak. Within a few months, I was editor in Nevada Magazine with 1 staffer, because 6 had rushed back to the safety of the highway department for a guaranteed wage. We added more staff as we could afford them. Nevada Magazine's purpose was to encourage tourism, so I asked the head of UNR's Department of Resource Economics to help me with a readership study to find out who the hell was reading that magazine. It turned out that most of the 10,000 subscribers were aging Nevadans on aluminum walkers. Part of the tourists to Vegas was the thing. In '76, we changed tactics, aimed at the editorial at the young, fit Californians and other out-of-staters who like to travel and gamble. We increased frequency from quarterly to bi-monthly. Stories included bailing out, secession as the sane alternative. And Bardwell's illustration had gun-toting border guards denying Californians entry. California subscriptions surged. One of my favorites was Rooster of the Chicken Ranch, about a whorehouse operator in Brum, written by a friend from Esquire. The art was amazing. Governor List didn't like that story. Governor O'Callahan loved it. We put Nevada in the black after 2-year settlements for the first time in 42 years. You and I did a second study for me then, just before I quit, which showed that Nevada Magazine was responsible for bringing $48 million into the state every year. Oh, you're making me cry. Good job, that is a boost. Range is a different story. Starting with a 32-page brochure in '89 at the request of 5 cowboys and soil scientists from California, Nevada, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. It was aimed at member of Congress. They sent me to 6 ranches from Searchlight to Jackpot, asked for 500 copies. I told them you can get 20,000 copies for the same price, so they ordered 20,000. I was impressed. I don't know about you. We delivered that brochure, sent it all over the western states from California to the Dakotas. California cattlemen complained. Grazing fees are not the issue. It's endangered species, wetlands, takings, overregulation, urban encroachment, and environmental innocence. That sounded like a real magazine to me. So Range, the cowboy spirit on America's Outback, was born as a quarterly close to 30 years ago. The Cowboys helped get subscriptions. There was almost no seed money. The office was my house in Washington Valley, and its life expectancy was 2 or 3 issues. Range has subscribers in 50 states, 23 foreign countries, and according to another UNR readership study, about 170,000 readers, mostly men from 40 to 70, half urban, half rural. We published 16 hardback books about ranching, winning a Wrangler from the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma, and 5 Will Rogers Gold medallions in Fort Worth. Ann Henderson, who helped save Range magazine, Nevada magazine, works for me in Vegas and distributes press releases to more than 2,200 members in the media via email each quarter. Our website receives about 2 million hits a year, mostly urban. I'm old. I just sold my IBM Selectric, and I still work off a really large Rolodex. So Range hired Marjorie Horn to entertain the young on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a blog called Range File. She's feeding 18,000 friends on Facebook. I'm not even a member. I love this job, perhaps because it's so bloody difficult. Our great reporters cover stories seldom told with lots of red meat. In our fall issue, we recruited a 16-page special report on American Prairie Reserve, also known as the Buffalo Comments, which was suggested by 2 incredibly arrogant professors at Rutgers University, New Jersey, who thought they knew what was best for the West. APR's intent is to take a massive swath of productive cattle and sheep ranches in 4 states, hundreds of square miles, then fill that big prairie with bison. Our investigative journalist Dave Skinner has won many NPA awards. He was assigned 3,000 words. He wrote 11,000. Dave dug really deep and told me APR is probably the most significant and dangerous effort by Big Green to depopulate unwilling communities ever. I couldn't cut a word. Montana rancher Leanne Delaney wrote, quote, APR is hell-bent on taking away our way of life to build a petting zoo for bison, grizzlies, mountain lions, and wolves, and want us to get along with their vision of an international park. We have to stop this or there won't be anything left for our kids and grandkids, unquote. Leanne Delaney's family is one reason why I work so hard for Range. And now something a little more positive. I want to thank my friends Myron Borders, A.D. Hopkins, Warren LaRue, all Hall of Famers, and Ann Henderson for nominating me for this celebrity. It was these 4 and the blessing of the NBA board that brought this honor to me, and it is more than humbling because I'm not nearly smart enough to work on it daily. When Richard called to tell me about it, my feet started to tingle and he brought me to tears. I told him I needed to go get a cup of wheat tea and a chocolate to quit palpitating. Then I wanted to send a letter to my old headmistress to let her know that this honor proves that I did not need to pass English to work in the colonies. My whole life, a rash of peculiar dogs seemed to aim directly at Range. I was always in search of that cowboy spirit, It's been tough, broke, tiring, and bloody journey, but every day I look forward to trying to make the next issue of Range just a little bit better, just a little bit more worthy. The fact is, I found my dream in Nevada's high, clean, beautiful desert, and the gift from Nevada Press Association has more than exceeded that dream. Thank you.
That's what it's all about, guys. It doesn't get any better than that. Could CJ and Holly stand by for just a few pictures for posterity? We have a wonderful state. And what we do in this state is not to be underestimated. Times are tough, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a shit. Work hard. Make your communities better. Even if you have to use your credit card to pay the payroll. Anybody done that yet? It is a wonderful community. So, CJ, I'd like to spend more time with you, is what I'd like to do. Can you come back?
Free, and do you know much about cowboys?
You know what? I know enough to know that they're better stewards of the land than the federal government. Is that okay?
Hey, man, brother. I got some cowboys here from Utah.
All right. Well,
John, Nathan, and Todd, right there. Utah Cowboys.
all right. They have. It is a way of life that is under threat, and you know, the philosophy that even conservative bureaucrats take is unbelievable. They think that a rancher is going to ruin his land. No, he's not. He's gonna protect his land, and he's going to do it better than somebody in Washington D.C. I'm off because I'm in Marin. I don't get a chance to talk like this. It is so nice to be in Nevada, and what you guys do is terrific.
For a free sample copy, call 1-800-RANGE-FOR-YOU. Or go to lindsmagazine.com, and you can print any damn story that I've printed on there for the last 30 years. There's a lot of information that'll blow your mind. It is staggeringly incredible, the truth that's coming off those lands that nobody's hearing. And if the voice is only mine, we're in bad shape.
What we need is in future meetings to try to carve some time out for a little beer session with some of these. Can I call you a character? Would that be all right?
Oh, I've been called a lot of things.
Well,
That
just
would be a compliment.
when you look at the Nevada Hall of Fame, it is unbelievable, really. And there are people who aren't even in it. But when I think of Michael Callahan
My buddy.
and those guys, I just, it makes me proud to be in Nevada. We are unique, we are different. Don't take a backseat to California or Arizona. We do what we do, and let me drop the mic. Stick around for a picture. Thank you very much for coming.
That is beautiful. Yes. Yes.
How old are you now?
This light is very bad for 780-year-olds. This way. Let's have the light behind me, will we? Hey, Holly. Yes. Get your butt over
Yes,
here.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Let me get my clap, okay?
Oh, I think so.
All right.
We're the only two live ones left in the room.
I know. And we both love Nevada. I love it.
Ah, yeah. Where were you born?
I'm from Utah, but came to Nevada.
I got the favorite publisher.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
It's tough.
That's enough.
I know. Oh, I know how hard you work at it. Minimal.
Aren't they great? Oh, yeah.